I'd like to commend the government for many of the ideas in this initiative. I agree with Deputy O'Donnell that there are creative and practical ideas in here, and as many of the deputies have said, with nearly 440,000 people out of work and that number due to rise by 30,000 this year, anything that we can do to stimulate job creation is welcome. I'm delighted to see the focus on tourism. I know this will be particularly welcome in Wicklow, which has a huge untapped potential for tourism. There are many other good initiatives. The microfinance fund, I think, is a fantastic idea, and I think it will boost entrepreneurship all over the country. The stimulation of R&D is very, very welcome, and hopefully will create high-paid jobs both now and for many years to come in the country. The lowering cost of employment via halving employer PRSI and by a review of the sectoral wage agreements is also welcome, and hopefully will make it easier for employers to boost employment in the coming months and years. And I'm delighted to see that the government has targeted graduates, who of course are in an extremely tricky position via the National Internship Programme. I hope it works, and I hope it is scaled up. There's three areas of concern I have with the proposal, which I would like to share with the government. The first is around the level of funding. One of the things that really strikes me is that an additional investment of $470 million simply isn't enough. The $470 million, for me, brings into stark contrast the $35 billion which we're paying rightly or wrongly, but what it says is this. It says that we're going to pay another $35 billion to cover the losses of private companies here and abroad, and we're going to put less than 1/70th of that amount into stimulating jobs in Ireland. That doesn't feel like the right balance to me. I know it's complex, I know there are all sorts of pieces, but if we look at that and step back, €1 for every 70 that we're paying for other people's losses simply does not feel right to me. It feels we need a far, far bigger stimulus package here, and as I have outlined in the chamber before, I think there are various options that would allow us to do that. The second issue is the funding mechanism. The funding mechanism is essentially a tax on savings. These savings happen to be in the form of pensions. It's not a tax on the profits of the pension industry, which is what was referred to by previous deputies. It is a tax on savings. Now, pensions are not as liquid as savings. They're not as easy to move offshore. But I think a tax in this form on the amount of savings rather than on the profits from savings, say like the dirt tax, begins to move us in a very, very dangerous position and could, if continued, have very, very serious implications for our banking sector. So I'd just like to raise that. The third issue is around the lack of targets in the initiative. There are great ideas in this initiative, but what is hugely conspicuous by its absence is a lack of targets. There are some, but right now we don't know what our $470 million is meant to get us. Now, we know the targets are essential. We know the targets make for better policy decisions. We know that they lead to better outcomes during implementation. And we know that it's what we need to check whether or not our money is being well spent. So I'm puzzled by the lack of targets. And so I would ask the Minister to say, if there are targets, please publish them so that we can take a look. And if there aren't targets, please go back to your policy team and get some. I think they're very, very important to know whether or not this is succeeding, and indeed what the best initiatives are, so that we can invest further and stop doing the things that don't seem to be having any impact. So I think that is very important. I'd like to finish with a few suggestions, further suggestions for the jobs. The first is around publishing a gender analysis. We have a situation where the vast majority of politicians and the vast majority of senior policymakers are men. There is a tendency in those cases to favour job creation in traditionally male areas. So I would love to see a gender review of the proposal. I would love to see a radical reform of third-level institutions around teaching. Our teaching quality is pretty low. And there are a variety of revenue-neutral things the government could do to increase that very, very quickly and increase the quality of our graduates. We need to lower the council rates, as has been discussed here before, and I believe a vast amount of potential savings have been identified. I'd love to see that happen soon. We can free up dormant buildings for entrepreneurs. We have a huge number of people looking for space to create businesses, and we have a vast number of commercial properties, that we could be creative and try and match those two things up. And then finally, I would just like to say, please consider scaling this up. Again, €1 in job creation for every 70 euros to cover the debts of failed businesses does not feel like the right balance. So I would ask the government and I would ask the Minister to just say, is that the best outcome for the 440,000 people out of work and for the additional 30,000 people who may lose their jobs this year?
I would now call on Deputy Jones.